that are the quote unquote weak spots of Testament. They either say the Ritual because it was softer, or they say Low because it was death metal-y.
Really?
Those are,
low? Really low?
Not low. I didn't mean low. Demonic.
Okay. Well, yeah. See, dude, it's weird for me because, like, Demonic came right after Low. Mm-hmm. And again, like, we talked about this for a brief second in the last segment, but like, I opened for Testament on the Low tour, and it was fucking brutal. It was amazing. And I think if you go back and look, and Testament, like, in every interview, if you look back, they say that, you know, God, what is that? The Gathering, is that like the opens with DNR?
Yeah.
Yeah. They say that, okay, that's where we, you know, got back into their, you know, their groove and stuff. But like, dude, Low was a fucking kick ass record. You got Hail Mary, you've got Low, you know, Dogs of War. Like, I mean, dude, that was fucking a kick ass record.
Yeah. Low was great. Demonic. People hated Demonic because Chuck did the death metal voice through the whole thing.
What did you think about that? Because, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of the whole death metal voice thing, but I think there's a ton of great songs on there.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites that they've ever done. But you know me with the heavy music, the heavier the better for me. So,
right.
You know,
well, you know, we're gonna get into this. Mm-hmm. The fucking Souls of Black tour. It just came out this week with, you know, fucking Megadeth and Judas Priest. They were on tour in 1990, and Dave Mustaine tried to ban Testament from doing the full show.
Yep.
So, I mean, let's get into that, dude, because, like, you know, it's been on Blabbermouth. Like, it's a big thing. Like, again, like, we talked about this earlier with, like, musicians being fucking assholes. Like, how about the fact that, like, it was 1990, and at that point, like, you know, Testament had I think the Souls of Black record, I think, was their fourth album. It was either third or fourth. And, you know, Megadeth had Rust in Peace, which was obviously monstrous.
Sure.
But why the fuck would Dave be an ass and, you know, not let Testament have all the sound, all the, you know, as an opening band? Like, if you're touring on a record as unbelievably untouchable as fucking Rust in Peace, and you're with, like, Testament and Judas Priest, like why would Dave Mustaine not let Testament do all their backdrops and all that kind of stuff? Like why would he feel threatened by that? Like, if you're on a record like Rust in Peace, like, why would you feel threatened by that? I don't get it. Like,
yeah, I don't. The only thing I could think of is that Megadeth not as good of a live band as Testament. Simple as that. And they didn't want them to show them up every night.
Now wait a minute. Like, now, especially back then, like, do you think, like, I mean, and this is like a, like, apples to apples comparison. Like, Testament is obviously incredible live, and back then in 1990, it was the classic lineup of Megadeth. So, like, right. I mean, so obviously they were, like, razor sharp. Like, so what excuse did Dave have for trying to keep Testament from doing just a backdrop?
I'm not saying that Megadeth was not as good as Testament. What I'm saying is that's the perception. That's the, you know, that fucking ego of we can't get shown up. We can't let these guys have anything which would show us up. But my personal taste is that Testament is a better live band than Megadeth. Always has been. Personally, I don't think Megadeth's bad, but I think they're a little boring. You know, I mean, let's be honest. For 30 years now, Mustaine comes to the middle of the stage, fucking shakes his head and plays, and he rips his fucking ass off, but he doesn't do anything. He just stands there and riffs and fucking shakes his head.
Yeah.
And
hard to argue there. Yep.
Junior puts on a good show, and whatever guitar player that they always have has always done a pretty good job. Right. And the drummers have always been solid, but not not spectacular drummers. Where Testament, if you watch any Testament video of any tour that they've ever played, they start out bone dry, they end up soaked to the bone.
Yep.
Every Testament show ever. They put everything out.
Yep.
And again, I'm not shitting on Megadeth Live. I've enjoyed Megadeth Live a dozen times or more. So I'm not shitting on them. I'm just saying that as far as a show goes, Testament. Every time.
Yeah. Dude, nobody that's listening will know this reference, but you will. I took Dominic's first actual thrash metal show was Sepultura opening for Testament at the Agora a couple years ago, and we left, and he was like, Dominic, like he doesn't say shit if he's got a mouthful, and we left. I was like, God damn, and he looked at me, he was like, yeah, that was cool, like, and for Dominic that means this fucking rocked. I mean, Testament is just, and Chuck Billy's got that like half mic stand, like Jody does for, and oh my God, they're just fucking fantastic. Like, and but I think in this story, where Chuck's talking about Dave being a cock, like I think we talked about this earlier, him being a cock. How awesome is it that Rob Halford was like, fuck you, they're getting the full show.
Well, that's Dave was throwing his weight around, and then fucking Halford said, wait a minute, I'm the fucking headliner here.
Right.
I'll read a little bit of this. In a brand new interview with Machine Head frontman Rob Flynn's No Fucking Regrets with Rob Flynn podcast, Testament singer Chuck Billy reflected on his band's first ever U.S. arena tour, which took place in 1990 with Judas Priest as the headliner and Megadeth as additional support. Billy said, for the Priest tour, we decided we were going to spend some time on production. We bought a big fancy Volker rack. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is? A Volker rack?
It's a drum rack. So it's basically like the drums look way bigger than they actually are. Yeah.
It's like that Queensryche type box thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of one of those. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We bought 2 new scrims, full on backline, the whole deal. Nice looking show. And we get to the first show and Dave Mustaine sees us have it up and he says we can't use it. We have a little problem. So we have a little problem with the first week of the tour. And I could see where he'd be pissed after they spent a shit ton of money. I mean, I'm assuming this rack thing costs a lot of money.
A lot, yes.
And I'm assuming that getting custom scrims isn't cheap.
No, well, back then, again, he'll say in a second, 15 to 20 grand back then.
Yeah, wow.
Which now is like 5-6 grand, but
Let's see here. He continues. I was pissed because we just spent all this money. And those were the days when they were hand-painted backdrops. These backdrops were 15 to 20 grand. They weren't cheap then. So we were like, we're coming out to represent. Priest tour in arenas, man. We're coming out. But Dave threw his weight around and said, we can't use all of our new stuff. So for the first week, we were like tails between our legs playing. And that sucks. I feel bad for the people that caught the first leg of the tour or the first week of the tour.
Right.
Got a shitty Testament show. Well, it probably wasn't shitty, but it wasn't the full thing. Let's see. And all the guys in our band said, Chuck, you seem to be friends with Rob. Go in there and tell him. He keeps telling you guys, if you guys need anything, just ask. So go in there. And I'd had it. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna. So I went in there. It was like 3 or 4 days into the tour. I go in the Priest dressing room. I said, hey, Rob, you got a minute? I need to talk to you. I go, I don't know who to talk to, but I'm going to come to you. And if it's your guys' decision, hey, I'm down with it. But I thought I would bring this up. We bought all this stuff for this tour to put on a nice show, and the Megadeth guys said we can't play because they said you guys wouldn't let us use it.
Well, now, real quick, it sounded like you said the Megadeth guys.
Yeah.
What is it?
Megadeth,
the Megadeth guy.
Yeah.
Singular.
My bad.
Basically, Dave Mustaine said, fuck off. So
exactly.
Continue.
and he was like, what? Who said that? Right there, he went and got his tour manager and said, get in here. Rob said, do you know anything about this? Them not letting Testament not use their gear? Tour manager says no. And Rob said, you make sure tonight that they get that damn gear up there. So we had a full-blown show. And who comes side stage to watch the show? There goes Mr. Mustaine.
Mr. Mustaine.
Mr. Mustaine is standing there just pissed off. He just had that look. And we were looking over just like, oh, yeah, Dave. And we were putting it on, throwing it down. And that's how that tour started. That's funny. But you know what, dude? There's so much of that politics that goes on in these tours and it still goes on. That's what's amazing to me is that, now it's like Testament's been out there 30 fucking years and, and they play these big shows, but like you and I went and saw me, you, Stephanie, and Dominic went and saw, Slayer, Death Angel,
and Anthrax,
Behemoth, and Anthrax. That was the tour.
No, not Behemoth. That was they played Blossom. No. The show that we saw was Death Angel, Anthrax, and Slayer. Behemoth was at the Slayer tour, like at Blossom, which you wanted nothing to do with.
Oh, all right. Well, I thought that Behemoth played that tour too, but whatever.
No.
Whatever. The one thing that came out of that tour, everybody had perfect sound. Yep. Everybody had full sound. Yep. So as much as you say the Slayer guys are dicks, they gave full sound.
Yep.
Dude,
and that's it's funny. Like, sorry to cut you off, but I mean that's a real thing. Like, I mean, I've done very few national shows,
right?
But I have done a couple, and they actually do that. It's like, well, we got to look bigger than you. We got to do this. We got to do that. And I told you the story off here, but I'll tell it right now. Like, APG opened for Hoobastank, who opened for Velvet Revolver.
Right.
And we were just some fucking shitty local band, but we sold a bunch of tickets and people came to see us, whatever, but we played on a stage outside. It was basically us outside. And then in the arena was, Hoobastank and Velvet Revolver. And we were warming up and stuff. And, our guitar player, Pat, was not a fan of Velvet Revolver. He hated Scott Weiland, which can't blame him for that. But and so, we're kind of strumming chords, and Pat goes up to me and goes, "Fall to pieces," like just joking around. And somebody happened to be driving past. It was on the crew for Velvet Revolver. Hey, fucking stop that! You fucking stop that! But we found out that a couple hours later that Scott Weiland had told the local crew, "Get those fucking guys out of here. I did not approve an opening band." And it's like, we're like, dude, we're a fucking local band, like from right around the corner. Like, we're not taking away from your crowd. We're actually adding to it by maybe a couple hundred people. Like, what the fuck does it matter?
Yeah.
Like the guy was that much of a fucking cock.
Right. It's literally like, what are you worried about, junkie? Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Like, so, but back to your point, like, continue. So,
no, but I mean, it's funny because I've seen all these bands a million times, and I've heard this about Megadeth from other band guys too. Des told me this from the
Devil Driver,
but he's from Devil Driver. But from when Cold Chamber opened for Megadeth. They got half
Right.
sound. They got half sound and half stage. And I mean, different style of music, but one of the most famous things ever was when Warrant opened for Poison on the I think it was Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinkin' Rich, and Poison was on like Flesh and Blood or one of those fucking records.
Right.
They were told, the Warrant guys were told, that they were only allowed to use X amount of space on the stage, and they weren't allowed to, there was like poles and ramps and shit that was interfering with their stage setup, and they were told they weren't allowed to be on any of that shit. And they got like half sound or quarter sound, I think they said that they got at the time.
Yep.
And they famously gave fucking Poison the old fuck you, and just went out one night and fucking ran around on all their gear, fucking ran around on all their risers, all their ramps, swinging around on their fucking poles that they had around, running behind. They had one of those, I don't know what you call that. It's like the riser behind a drum kit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They were up there tearing the cover off of Poison's gear, so that Poison's gear was all exposed during Warrant set. Like they did all this shit, and they got kicked off of the fucking Poison tour for just being rabble rousers, because they you know, and it's the same thing. It's like, I understand the sound thing for one reason and one reason only, and I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
Right.
If a band comes out, if the opening band comes out full sound and blows something up, amps or fucking, you know, something in the sound goes, the bass or something, the bass levels in the sound goes bad during the opening band, you got 20,000, 15,000 people pissed off.
That's never going to happen, though.
But it could.
No, it can't. It can't.
How can it?
See,
not?
that's the thing, because it's just sound levels, man. Like you can't turn things up. No, you cannot turn things up loud enough to
blow a speaker
up. No, you can't. You can't.
I've done it on my home stereo.
Well, yeah, on your home stereo, sure, but you can't do it in a live show, because you can only turn things up so loud, because on your amplifier, let's say I'm playing bass, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can turn it all the fucking way up, but in the house, they can turn it way the fuck down. Like, so you can't actually blow. The only thing you can blow a speaker on is your actual amplifier, but you can't blow the house out. So, yeah,
I guess, but I don't know. I've seen shows where the house's sound went to shit. You know, Metallica, when they played here on Death Magnetic, they fucking lost the house sound, and they were down for like 30 minutes while they put up new shit.
Well, that's because Lars Ulrich was playing drums. Or
it doesn't matter who was doing it. It was capable of happening.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just ripping on Lars because he's a fucking gigantic piece of garbage. So, you know how much I hate Lars, dude.
I know.
Fucking, oh my God. You want to talk about a band like, as much as like Hetfield now is like wearing Papa Het on his fucking like shirt. Oh my God. Like, as garbagey as that is, and garbagey is not a word, but I'm making it a word. Garbagey as that is. Yeah. You could still tolerate Metallica. Yeah. You know, Kirk, like, he's sloppy with his leads now. Mm-hmm. You know, but Rob Trujillo is fucking slamming. Hetfield is still like fucking, he's got the down pick, and he's still Hetfield. Like,
Hatfield.
Lars, yeah. Hatfield. Dude, Lars is fucking absolutely putrid.
Yeah, he's terrible.
I mean, my brother, like 2 weeks ago was like, hey guys, like $120, like we can get like 10 of us, like let's go to see the Metallica show. I immediately hit him back like, no, I will not put a nickel in fucking Lars Ulrich's pocket. I will not watch him play drums like that. He just destroys, like, I mean, like, you know, the fucking, they were on Howard Stern a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he first of all, back in the all right.
Slow down,
dude. I'm telling you, he fucked up Metallica the Black Album by simplifying the drum beats. You know, he said, my drum idol is, you know, Clive Burr and whatever, the fucking, you know, the AC/DC drummer. Mm-hmm. So he simplified all the drum beats. Well, fucking there on Howard Stern a couple weeks ago, he simplified his simple drum beats. Like, what the fuck? Can you please try to play drums? Like, what the fuck? So
he plays like Neil Peart now.
Really? Fuck off, man. So anyway, continue.
No, it's the bottom line to it is that we've heard this for years about Megadeth.
Yeah.
And it's Mustaine. I mean, it's not, you know, I don't claim to be best friends with David Ellefson at all, but he's a pretty accessible, good dude. And does not seem the type. I mean, the way he does 4 million fucking interviews and brings all his friends' bands into his own StreamYard things and has 400 different guys playing on his cover album and stuff. I don't think it's David Ellefson that's going to the fucking management saying, turn their sound down. You know, I don't think that's the case. And it certainly ain't Kiko. And it's certainly not Dirk.
Not Dirk,
And I doubt it was any of the Drovers. Yep. You know, I mean, we know who it is. It's Dave. And the guy, for a guy that has that much talent, it is amazing to me that he has that much faith in his talent to need to do that. I would think a guy that has that much ego and talent would be like, give him everything because we're going to fucking smoke him anyway.
Dude, that's exactly, dude, you know, back when, you know, Gatlin was doing our stuff and like we sold out the Odeon and everything, like the only thing we ever did, because we got asked all the time, like, do we get all the sound? Do we get all the lights? We're like, fuck yeah. The only thing we took was the drum riser. And the only reason we did that was because it was just a pain in the ass to get a bunch of drums on and off. Like, you know, other than that, we're like, yeah, fucking take everything, dude. And for the exact reason that you just mentioned was, you know, even bands that were fucking amazing that were opening for us, we looked at it in that exact fashion was, dude, these guys are going to kick us in the ass, then we're going to kick your ass. Like, I mean, it was an awesome thing. And so we gave them all sound, all lights and everything. And, you know, again, like, obviously we weren't like, you know, Megadeth, we're a national band, but it was our show. It held 1,000 people. We sold out 1,000-seat venue and, you know, we were the headliner.
Sure.
But we gave everybody everything except for the drum riser. And the only reason the drum riser, like I just said, was because it was just a pain in the ass to move drums that much. But the rest, it was like, dude, yeah, bring it. Like, it just makes a better show. You know, it just, you know, if you know, the openers have this amazing show, it makes the headliner have to fucking, you know, bring their A game, you know? And it's, you know, I'm totally with you. Like, why Megadeth wouldn't, especially Dave Mustaine, like, he's so competitive and so fucking just so egotistical. Like, you would think he'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to kick your ass instead.
Yeah. The only, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to offer this, but I'm not even going to believe it. I'm just going to offer this and see if you think there could be validity to this. The only reason I could think of that bands wouldn't do that is because if they start out their set and they're not dominant, the headliner, the crowd empties out. The crowd will empty out by like the halfway point of their set because they've already seen something really fucking good. And then, you know, if you see Testament, and again, this is more talking about established bands too. Right. If the show was Death Angel, Testament, Megadeth, and Death Angel fucking kills, which they do live.
Yes.
And Testament comes and they're even better than Death Angel.
Yep.
Which happens a lot.
Yep.
And then Megadeth comes out, and by the halfway point of the show, when they're playing a Toot Le Monde or Breadline or something, you know, you might just be like, you know what? Seen it before. out.
Yeah.
If 5,000 people leave a 10,000 seater, then they're playing the end of their set. And you know as well as I do, dude, when you play a show that's way underneath what you should be playing, it's very hard to get that fucking full head of steam going. You know, when you're just absolutely used to play, even if it's like 1,000 people, if you're used to playing in front of 1,000 people and you end up playing a club for 31 people or something because it's a Tuesday night or whatever, it's awful hard to bring the full on energy to it, you know?
I've actually never had that experience, and I'm not even joking about that. Like, that's why Don and I cut Gatlin short. Like, because we didn't want to have that experience, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But we literally cut it off because we didn't want to have that experience. Right.
Well, look at the way it was portrayed in the dirt. You know, when they portrayed it in the dirt, they made it look like Motley Crue went from selling out stadiums to playing in front of 43 people at a fucking show. And that was not the case. I mean, I saw the fucking Karabi show and it was a sold out Nautica. It was like 5,000 people at Nautica, but they perceived that as nobody was there. You know, that's how they perceived it, as there was nobody there because it was only 5,000 people instead of 20.
Well, so, yeah, they were so used to exactly 20,000 that, you know.
But it was funny when the one little scene in the dirt where they show the Karabi era and they show him looking behind the curtain and it looks like a fucking social distanced fucking restaurant, you know. Fucking here's a guy, then there's 14 seats, then there's another guy. It looks fucking ridiculous. And Motley Crue never played that way, but that was the way they portrayed it to make their point. You know. And but I get it. And they've said that they had trouble playing those shows because they were so used to big show, huge production. Obviously, you know, Tommy Lee at that point had been doing the drum riser horse shit for years at that point. Now all of a sudden he's playing Nautica where there is no drum riser thing. It's just sitting playing drums. You know, he had nothing to get excited. Well, I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but it makes sort of sense, you know, when you're used to doing this crazy fucking cutting edge shit and all of a sudden you're doing what everybody else does and you're not making nearly the same money. It's got to be a bit deflating to say, all right, well, I'm going to come up here and play fucking Home Sweet Home again.
Well, do you think that, well, I mean, now here's the thing. Live, like the whole show thing you're talking about, like I get, but do you really think like they weren't making the same money? Like you have to, like, I mean, you know, they weren't?
I know for a fact they were not.
All right. What kind of pay cut did they take? Give me a percentage.
Probably about 50.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. From the arena days and from the arena, they went from arena to Nautica, dude.
Okay. But that doesn't mean that they had to take a pay cut.
But they did because the label, everybody abandoned them.
Okay. I asked you, do you know for a fact?
For an absolute fact that they took like a 50% pay cut. I know that for sure. And I know that from conversations with band guys.
All right. So give me a dollar amount. Like at the 50% pay cut, what were they making on the Karabi tour at a 50% pay cut per guy?
I don't know the exact number, but I've been told that it was something like $150,000 a night for the band.
And that was their 50% pay cut?
Well, at that time, don't forget that was before they were paying $3 million a fucking night or whatever that they do now. You know, back then tickets were $20 a piece.
Wait a minute. So now we're talking about crazy dollar amounts. Okay, so they were making $150,000 a night on the Karabi tour.
Yeah.
But like, so, and you said it's a 50% pay cut. So they're making $300,000 with Vince before that.
Yeah. That's why they stayed on tour for fucking like 3 and 4 years at a time. Because it wasn't like today's numbers. It wasn't like when Metallica rolls into the fucking queue and gets $2.5 million to play. You know, this was back when tickets were 20 fucking bucks a ticket. And, you know, you'd sell 5,000 of them at $20 and then you and then merch, you get a percentage of merch and percentage off of the, concession and all that other shit. That it was a different time. That's why if you think about it, think about what bands say now. Bands always say now they can only make money touring, where in the old days they made their money selling records. So even though they were getting fucked out of 14 of every $15 per record, they still made more money making 1/15 of a record sale than they did selling concert tickets.
Very true. Very true.
That's just the way it was back then. It was a different time.
Well, I have to ask you this, and this is just me being a Van Halen honk, but since we're talking about like touring money, and you and I obviously are huge Sammy Hagar fans.
Sure.
We're, Hagar, I want to kind of address the fact that, the Van Hagar reunion tour, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was on.
Yeah.
And then it was off because I think you told me that they were asking 1.5 a show. I think it was
1.5 million, 1.5 or 2 million or something like that. Yeah, it was a big number.
How close was that to happening?
Very close. Like the dates were there. They couldn't settle on the money. The dates were there. The dates were already, penciled in.
Now, who couldn't settle on the money? Like the promoters or the band?
The band, I believe. Probably management. I don't think it was the band themselves, but I think it was management.
Irving Azoff, really?
Well, but the management, don't forget, Sammy wasn't going to come back and work with Van Halen's management. He was going to have his own management.
True.
So then you have to start doing cuts, and then who's going to take what cut and how much goes to this guy versus that guy, and this management versus that management. And,
right.
Does Irving Azoff get his normal management cut? Does he take less of a management cut because he's only representing the guys with Van Halen in their name?
Sure.
I mean, there's so much logistical shit that goes into that when you start bringing in multiple management companies. Right. And Sammy was not going to let Irving do his work for him. Wasn't going to do that. Because if Sam, and again, this is all speculation. It could be fucking bullshit for all I know. But from what I heard, one of the sticking points was the management, the multiple managers. And Sammy was willing to work with that management if they brought Michael Anthony in.
Oh, so the sticking point was Michael Anthony? Seriously?
Well, no, the sticking point was the management. But because Sammy threw Michael Anthony in there, I don't think Sammy really wanted to do it. From what I've heard, it just sounds like and again, this is what I've heard. Don't hold me to it. I don't want to see Sammy Hagar coming out. Not that he would, but I don't want to see Sammy Hagar saying this is bullshit. It didn't happen like that at all.
Sorry if I'm telling tales out of school. By the way, if I'm
fine. But this is
if I'm roasting you, like
this is just what I heard
right.
from people on that tour. It was the dates were already confirmed it was like 50 dates over a summer. Sammy had told his band, take a year off because I'm going to be out with Van Halen.
Right.
And I mean, things were moving in that direction.
Right.
And then it just fell apart. And I was told that it fell apart because of management commitments and, multiple managers wanting multiple stake and multiple monies, and they couldn't settle on how much per night and how much each guy per night and, how much each management company per night. And, Azoff has a what do you call that? A 360 deal with Van Halen.
Yep.
And Sammy is in there. Is that technically part of his 360 deal, or is it Van Halen with Sammy Hagar, which is not going to be worth as much in a billing? There's a million fucking puzzle pieces that were a problem. So, and again, I don't know that that's true or not true or whatnot, but me saying it right now, it sounds true. And, I mean, it sounds reasonable. It sounds like it could have happened that way.
I would have to think it is, because you told me months and months and months before the Guns reunion happened a couple of years ago. You're like, dude, it's happening. Yeah. And you told me that the Van Halen reunion was happening. Then all of a sudden it didn't. So like, obviously, things. And
I was so sure of the Van Halen thing happening that I actually made a fucking $100 financial bet with one of the guys from the Rock and Metal Combat podcast, because one of those guys that hates Sammy Hagar so much. And I was like, this fucking show is happening. This tour is happening. And they're like, no fucking way, no fucking way. And I knew that it was already penciled in. I knew the Cleveland date. I'd already talked to their fucking truck driver that had told me what the Cleveland date was. So I knew when it was happening. And so I threw $100 in the pile. And then sure enough, it fell apart, and I had to pay this guy $100 fucking bucks. But it's
dude, how much would you like, knowing, and you're not, I'm going to pay a shitload of money for a show guy. You're not that guy. Right. But you and I, like a year ago, literally at this point, like a year ago, we've seen Sammy, and granted, he tuned down like maybe a step. He was fucking amazing. And you didn't see Eddie in 2015, so obviously Roth is a piece of shit, but Eddie was absolutely, he was amazing in 2013, but way better in 2015. What is your ticket price?
See,
if you were just a fan to see Sammy singing the way he does, if Van Halen's going to tune down one step, and Eddie is completely sober, they're rocket, and it's with Michael Anthony.
See,
what would you do? How much would you pay?
This is where you'll get annoyed with me, because I would actually pay more to see Sammy solo than to see Van Halen.
Really?
Because I'm not as big of a Van Halen fan as I am of a Sammy Hagar fan. I would rather I would much rather see some of the Van Halen tunes and some of the Montrose tunes and some of the solo Sammy stuff.
Okay.
Than to see the Van Halen tour that we would end up getting, which would be about 50% of the Van Hagar songs, and then all the Roth ones that they have to do every night. And they would do. They're still going to do Panama. They're still going to do Jump. They're still going to do, Ain't Talking About Love. They're going to do those songs. And I saw those tours with Sammy, and not that he did them poorly, but he didn't do them the way I wanted to hear them. I didn't want to hear him singing those songs. I would have my favorite songs that they played on those Van Halen shows with Sammy were always There's Only One Way to Rock, Eagles Fly.
Excellent.
I liked those songs, or I liked when they brought in Sammy's music and added fucking Eddie Van Halen on guitar, who's 900 times better than whatchamacallit, than Sammy himself. And I don't know where John went, but he dumped out. Not sure where he went. Well, live again. Where did you fucking go? What happened? Let's see what we got here. What happened? Text him. I don't know. All right. Wasn't ready for that, but okay. So anyway, I guess we'll cut this this Van Halen segment short. What a fucking disaster. All right. Onward we go. I guess. Let's play some tunes. And we'll see if we can't get John back for one more segment, I guess. So let's check it out now. This is we'll play some Wasted, Pete Way. From the Vice's release, this is Women in Chains. It is Wasted right here on your Classic Metal Show.